She thought she could keep smashing my mailbox without consequences, until the day it hit back harder than she ever expected. Welcome to the Beaver's Den channel. Before starting, please hit the like button and subscribe so we can continue making stories like this. It started as a minor inconvenience. A few dents, a slight tilt, nothing too alarming, just enough damage to make me wonder if some reckless driver had misjudged the curb. But by the fourth time my mailbox had been completely wrecked, I knew this was no accident. This was personal, and I had a prime suspect. Her name was Karen. She wasn't just any neighbor, she was the neighbor. The one who thrived on confrontation, self-importance, and unnecessary drama. The type who monitored the length of your grass with military precision, counted the number of cars in your driveway like a private investigator, and filed HOA complaints like it was her full-time job. But lately, she had taken her reign of suburban terror to a whole new level. For reasons beyond rational explanation, she had fixated on my mailbox. Maybe she saw it as an affront to her perfect little kingdom. Maybe she hated the color. Or maybe, just maybe, she got some twisted satisfaction out of watching me replace it over and over again. But one thing was clear. This wasn't over. And if she wanted a war, she had just chosen the wrong opponent. Looking back, I should have seen the pattern earlier. The first few incidents were small enough to dismiss. A couple of scratches, a minor dent here and there. Things that could have been blamed on kids riding their bikes too close or a careless delivery driver misjudging the curb. The mailbox wobbled slightly, but it still stood. Then, one morning, I stepped outside to grab my newspaper and froze. My mailbox wasn't just dented, it was obliterated. The wooden post had been snapped in half, like a twig beneath a boot. The metal box itself lay a few feet away, battered beyond recognition, its door hanging open like a gaping wound. Someone had rammed into it with force, not just a careless bump, but a full-on attack. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't random. This was deliberate. I looked around for any clues, and that's when I saw them. Fresh tire marks skidding across the pavement, leading right up to where my mailbox had once proudly stood. My stomach twisted. There was no doubt in my mind about who was behind this. If you've ever lived in a suburban neighborhood, you probably know a Karen. That one neighbor who seems to think they were personally elected as the ruler of the block, armed with nothing but an inflated sense of authority and an HOA rulebook thicker than a dictionary. Karen was all of that and more. She had a sixth sense for other people's business, capable of spotting an unapproved lawn ornament from 3 houses away. She spent hours patrolling the neighborhood, peering through curtains like a nosy detective. And worst of all, she had a personal vendetta against anyone who didn't conform to her ridiculous standards. And unfortunately for me, I had unknowingly become her latest target. It started with passive-aggressive complaints. My garbage cans were out 5 minutes too early for pickup. I'd receive a formal notice from the HOA. My backyard barbecue went a little past 9 p.m. Suddenly there was an anonymous noise complaint, but when none of her usual tactics worked on me, she escalated, and now, it seemed, she had chosen a new battleground, my mailbox. The mailbox incidents weren't isolated. Over the next few months, the attacks became more frequent and more aggressive. First, the small dents, then the entire box getting knocked loose, and finally, full-scale destruction, splintered wood, twisted metal, and fresh tire marks as a calling card. It was always after a disagreement. If I ignored one of her HOA complaints, my mailbox suffered. If I parked my car in what she considered the wrong spot, my mailbox suffered. If I so much as looked in her direction the wrong way, my mailbox suffered. By the 5th time I had to replace it, I was beyond frustrated. But what made it worse? She acted like she had nothing to do with it. Every time, she played the innocent neighbor. Oh dear, what a shame. You really should be more careful with your placement. Maybe it's too close to the road, she'd say, her lips curling into a smug little smirk. Too close to the road? Give me a break. This was intentional. And the more I replaced it, the more she seemed to enjoy it. I tried to go through official channels. I reported the incidents to the HOA, but that was useless. Karen practically was the HOA. I called the police, but without clear evidence, there was little they could do. I even tried setting up a cheap security camera, but somehow she managed to dodge detection each time. That's when I realized this was never going to stop. I had two choices: keep playing her game or change the rules entirely. Karen, one chilly Saturday morning, I stepped outside with a cup of coffee, mentally preparing myself for another battle with my mailbox. But what I saw made my blood run cold. It was completely gone. Not just damaged, missing. All that remained was a jagged stump of wood, splinters scattered across the sidewalk like battlefield debris. The metal box? Nowhere to be found. It was as if someone had taken the time to remove all evidence of its existence. And there, standing across the street, was Karen. She wasn't doing anything overtly suspicious. Just standing on her porch, sipping her tea, watching me. But the smug look on her face said it all. She knew exactly what had happened. That was it. The final straw. I wasn't going to replace another mailbox just for her to destroy it again. I was done playing fair. If she wanted to escalate things, so be it. She had made one crucial mistake. She thought she could keep getting away with it. What she didn't realize was that I was about to turn the tables on her in a way she never saw coming. I didn't just want to stop Karen. I wanted to make sure she regretted ever messing with me in the first place. And so, that's when I came up with the perfect plan. A plan that would end this war once and for all. I stood there, staring at the empty spot where my mailbox had once been, my fists clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms. The cold morning air did nothing to cool the fire burning inside me. I was done. Done replacing mailboxes. Done watching them get obliterated time and time again. Done letting Karen win. I turned my gaze toward her house, and there she was, standing on her porch, cup of tea in hand, eyes locked onto me like she was waiting for my reaction. That smug smirk, that look of satisfaction. She wanted me to break. She wanted me to give up, to admit defeat, to accept that she had the power to make my life miserable. But what she didn't realize was that she hadn't beaten me. She had awakened something in me, a determination I hadn't felt in a long time, a drive to fight back, not just with retaliation, but with something so brilliant, so calculated, that she wouldn't even see it coming. She thought this was her game. Well, I was about to change the rules entirely. I didn't want just another mailbox. No, that wasn't enough. I needed something stronger, something indestructible, something that would send a message. So I spent the next few days researching. At first, I looked into reinforced mailboxes, thicker steel, heavier bases, and all kinds of indestructible claims. But none of them were good enough. They were all designed to survive accidents, not deliberate vehicular homicide at the hands of a crazed suburban menace. Then, I stumbled across something interesting. In certain rural areas where mailboxes are constantly at risk of being hit by snowplows, reckless drivers, and even bears, homeowners have resorted to extreme solutions. Concrete reinforced posts, steel core structures, mailboxes designed to absorb the impact of a truck without so much as a dent. That's when it hit me. I wasn't just going to build a reinforced mailbox. I was going to build a fortress. A mailbox so unyielding that whoever hit it next would regret every life choice that had led them to that moment. I spent hours researching different materials, testing durability ratings, and watching physics simulations of impact resistance. I consulted legal guidelines to make sure my plan was airtight. I wasn't about to give Karen any ammo to turn this against me. By the time I was done, I had the blueprint for the ultimate mailbox defense system. The Karen-proof fortress mailbox. If I was going to build something that could withstand repeated, deliberate attacks, I needed to go beyond normal materials. So, I made a list. The core, steel reinforcement. Instead of a standard wooden post, I got my hands on a solid steel pipe, thick enough that it would take a chainsaw to even scratch it. The foundation, concrete embedding. I wasn't just going to plant this into the ground, I was going to bury it in over 200 pounds of reinforced concrete. The armor, hidden plating. The mailbox itself needed to look normal, but inside, a layer of steel plating, welded together like a miniature tank. The trap, impact resistance with zero give. The key was in the rigidity. Any normal impact-resistant structure absorbs shock to prevent damage. But I didn't want shock absorption. I wanted all the force to be redirected back into the attacker. Karen had used her car against my mailbox. She had been smart about it, hitting it in ways that left little evidence. But this time, when she tried again, her car would take the full force of the impact, and it would not end well for her. Now, the real challenge wasn't just building it was building it without Karen catching on. She was nosy. She watched everything. If she saw me installing something that looked like a battle-hardened military-grade structure, she'd start asking questions, maybe even try to sabotage it before it was finished. So I had to be careful. First, I waited. I acted like I had given up. I let a few days pass without replacing the mailbox. Let her feel like she had won. Let her think I was defeated. Then, on a quiet afternoon, when she was gone, I started building. I dug deep, far deeper than any normal mailbox post should go. A 3-foot hole, wide enough to hold the reinforced concrete foundation that would anchor the steel post in place. I poured the concrete in layers, embedding the steel core post as I went. By the time it dried, that post was so solid that it would take an industrial vehicle to even budge it. Next came the mailbox itself. From the outside, it looked completely normal, but inside, it was an armored tank. Steel plating, bolted together, layered for impact resistance. The entire thing was designed to redirect energy, meaning any car that hit it wouldn't just stop. It would feel like hitting a brick wall at full speed. By the time I was done, the mailbox looked like any other mailbox on the street. But beneath that innocent exterior, it was a steel-clad, impact-destroying, legally unbreakable trap. I stepped back and admired my work. It was done, and now all I had to do was wait. Karen noticed right away when the mailbox was back. She came outside that very evening, standing on her porch, eyeing it like a hawk. I could feel her trying to figure it out. Was it just another ordinary mailbox, or was there something different about this one? She squinted, tilted her head, sipped her tea. And then she did something that told me everything I needed to know. She smirked, as if saying, "You really think that will last?" That's when I knew she was going to hit it. It wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when. I didn't have to do anything, didn't have to provoke her, didn't have to lay any more traps. The moment she saw that mailbox standing proudly in its place, she had already decided its fate, or so she thought. I just had to wait for her to make her move, and when she did, she would regret it for the rest of her life. The trap was set. The mailbox stood firm, looking like any other on the street. Ordinary, unassuming. A casual glance wouldn't reveal its true nature. A steel-reinforced, concrete-anchored, impact-redirecting fortress, ready for war. I didn't have to wait long, because Karen, she couldn't resist. For days, I watched. I saw the way she eyed the mailbox, how she lingered just a second too long whenever she walked past. I could feel the gears turning in her head, the way she tried to decide how, when, and if she was going to strike again. But deep down I knew. Karen wasn't the type to let something go, not when she had already declared victory in her mind. She had won the battle when she destroyed my previous mailbox. She had won when I didn't immediately replace it, and now she saw it standing there again, as if mocking her, as if daring her to take another shot. So, she would. She always did. And that's how I found myself waiting one chilly night, sipping my coffee by the window, knowing that any moment the real show was about to begin. It was almost too perfect. The street was quiet. Most of the neighborhood was asleep. A perfect night for someone to make their move unnoticed. And then I heard it, the low rumble of an engine, slow and deliberate. Not the casual sound of someone coming home late, but someone on a mission. Someone who didn't want to draw attention. I knew that engine. Karen drove a mid-size silver SUV, the type of car that screamed, "I need to feel important." And as that sound grew closer, I carefully stepped to the side of my window, just out of sight, watching. Her headlights flickered as she rolled up to my house, the beams dancing across my yard. Then, she stopped, right in front of my mailbox. My heart pounded, adrenaline rushing through me. I could already picture the look on her face, the sheer smugness she must have felt as she revved her engine ever so slightly. She had done this before. This wasn't new to her. In her mind, she had won every time. But this time, she was about to lose. There was a brief pause, a moment of hesitation, as if Karen was reconsidering. But then, she hit the gas. Hard. The SUV lurched forward, full speed, straight toward the mailbox. And then, the sound hit me like a thunderclap. A sickening, metallic crash shook the quiet street, followed immediately by a horrifyingly loud bang. The force of the impact echoed through the night, shattering the usual silence of suburbia. I didn't even need to look. I already knew what had happened. That steel-reinforced mailbox, it didn't budge, not an inch. Karen's car, on the other hand, let's just say, it didn't fare so well. There was a deep, gut-wrenching screech as her front bumper practically crumpled like paper. Her hood buckled inward as if it had just kissed a brick wall at 40 miles per hour. A hiss of steam erupted from the crushed radiator, a low groan from the now wounded beast that was once her precious SUV. I could only imagine the shock coursing through Karen's veins at that moment. She had expected the mailbox to go down like the last time, to fold under the force of her attack. Instead, she had just totaled her own car, on a mailbox. My mailbox. I bit down a grin, keeping my face unreadable as I casually opened my front door and stepped outside. The show wasn't over yet. Karen sat in the driver's seat, motionless. Her hands clutched the steering wheel in disbelief. The glow of her dashboard flickered erratically, her car now struggling to stay alive after its brutal collision with fate. She turned her head slowly, her face caught somewhere between horror and rage. I could see it in her eyes, the split second when reality hit her. She had lost. Not just lost, but spectacularly. I could barely contain my laughter as I strolled casually toward the wreckage, feigning concern. "Oh, wow," I said, my voice dripping with fake sympathy. Did you just hit my mailbox?" Karen snapped. You set me up," she screeched, shoving her door open and stumbling out. The rage in her voice was almost comical. "This is illegal. You can't, you tricked me." I crossed my arms, raising a brow. "I tricked you?" Her face turned an impossible shade of red. "Yes, you made it like this on purpose. I'm reporting you to the police. I'm reporting you to the ho-oh. You—" She gestured wildly at her wrecked SUV, as if expecting me to somehow take responsibility for her own actions. I stepped forward, tilting my head. "Karen, are you saying you deliberately hit my mailbox? On purpose?" Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. I could see the exact moment when she realized what she had just admitted. Her face fell, and just like that, her fight was gone. A long, painful silence stretched between us, and then, a voice from the darkness. "Holy crap, what happened?" I turned just as another neighbor, Mike, stepped outside in his pajamas, blinking at the scene of destruction in front of him. Karen took a sharp breath, whipping around. "Nothing. Mind your business." But it was too late. Mike wasn't the only one who had come outside. Porch lights flickered on, one by one, up and down the street. Curious eyes peered from windows. The whole neighborhood was waking up to Karen's grand humiliation. A wrecked SUV, a pristine, untouched mailbox, and a fuming Karen, now realizing that she had an audience. I couldn't have planned it better. The police arrived within minutes. Because here's the thing. No matter how Karen tried to spin it, she was the one who had driven into my mailbox. She was the one who had committed vandalism. And she was the one who now had to explain to the cops why her car was wrapped around a solid steel post. She tried everything, denying, blaming, even throwing a fake tantrum about unfair mailbox structures. But the officers weren't buying it. In the end, Karen was fined for reckless driving and property damage. Her insurance had to cover her totaled car because the mailbox was legal and within regulations. The HOA, they finally backed off, realizing Karen was a liability, not a leader. And my mailbox? Still standing. Not a single scratch. That was the moment everything changed. The moment Karen lost her power. The moment the entire neighborhood realized Karen wasn't invincible. She had tried to play dirty, but she had played herself instead. And I had just won the greatest suburban war ever fought. The wreckage of Karen's silver SUV still sat there, steam hissing from the crumpled hood as the flashing red and blue lights illuminated the entire street. She stood beside her ruined vehicle, arms crossed, seething. Not just with anger, but with pure, undeniable humiliation. She had tried to destroy my mailbox. Instead, she had destroyed herself. The best part? She wasn't even remotely prepared for what came next. The police officer, a no-nonsense guy with a clipboard and zero patience for suburban drama, scratched his head as he took down notes. He glanced from Karen's wrecked car to the perfectly intact mailbox. "So, let me get this straight," he said, flipping through his paperwork. You drove into a mailbox? Karen, red-faced and fuming, crossed her arms tighter. It was a trap. He did this on purpose. Look at it. It's not a normal mailbox. The officer gave me a glance, then back at her, clearly unimpressed. Ma'am, are you telling me you purposely hit his mailbox? Karen's mouth opened, then closed. She realized, too late, that she had just confessed to everything. The officer didn't need any further explanation. He sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Well, that's reckless driving, destruction of property, probably endangering others on a residential street, he muttered. You got insurance? Karen made a strangled noise. Why does that matter? The officer looked up, completely unimpressed. Because your car is totaled, ma'am, and considering you just admitted to slamming it into an indestructible mailbox, I'm guessing the insurance claim is going to be interesting. I could barely hold in my laughter. Karen, on the other hand, was losing her mind. By now, the entire street was outside. Pajamas, bathrobes, slippers. People had gathered like an audience at a free concert. Because tonight, the great tyrant had fallen. Wait, she actually hit his mailbox? Someone whispered. Full speed, Mike confirmed, shaking his head, grinning like he had just won the lottery. More murmurs spread. The realization dawned on everyone at once. The unspoken power Karen had held over the neighborhood was shattered. This was her undoing. For years, she had tormented people, reporting minor infractions, dictating the HOA rules like a self-appointed queen, making everyone's life miserable with her constant meddling and complaints. And now she was the one caught in her own mess, and everyone was watching. She wasn't feared anymore. She was a joke, and she knew it. Karen, in all her fragile, unhinged glory, snapped. This is a setup, she shrieked, her voice piercing through the night. I'm taking this to the HOA. I'm taking this to the city council. This mailbox is a danger to the public. The officer sighed, scribbling something down. Ma'am, the mailbox is fully compliant with regulations. It's on his property, properly installed and legally reinforced. Nothing illegal here. Karen's eyes bulged. But he knew. He knew I would hit it. Silence. Then laughter. Someone actually laughed out loud, probably Mike, and then, like dominoes, others started chuckling too, because Karen had just admitted to the entire neighborhood that she had intended to destroy my property. She had incriminated herself in front of the police, an officer who looked like he had dealt with way too many Karens in his career, and she had just lost any last shred of power she once had. But the best part? This wasn't even over yet. After what felt like an eternity of Karen stomping her feet, the police finally handed her a nice, crisp ticket for reckless driving. But that wasn't the worst of it, because her car, her precious SUV, it was totaled. As the tow truck arrived and hooked up what remained of her once glorious suburban chariot, reality must have finally hit her like a second impact. She had no car. She had a ticket. She had a public humiliation that would never be forgotten. And then came the final blow. The officer folded his arms, staring at her with exhaustion. Ma'am, I'd suggest you file an insurance claim first thing in the morning. Karen twitched. That won't be a problem. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, are you sure about that? And that was the moment her face dropped, because she realized exactly what I meant. Insurance fraud. Karen had deliberately rammed into an object that wasn't an accident. And insurance companies? They aren't stupid. If she filed a claim, there would be an investigation. The security footage, the police report, the fact that she literally admitted it to half the neighborhood, they wouldn't pay a cent. Her car was destroyed, her money gone, her entire suburban empire collapsing around her. For the first time in years, Karen wasn't an untouchable tyrant. She was just another fool who had tried to play dirty and lost. Over the next few weeks, the consequences rolled in like a storm. Karen disappeared from HOA meetings. Nobody took her seriously anymore. How could they? The woman had wrecked her own car on a mailbox. The HOA distanced itself from her completely. Suddenly, all those ridiculous nitpicky complaints she used to get enforced? Gone. In fact, a few new relaxed rules started coming in. No more petty fines, no more pointless regulations. She had no car for weeks. While she tried to figure out how to deal with insurance denying her claim, she was stuck at home, forced to rely on rides from her husband, who, by the way, looked absolutely miserable every time I saw him. Her reputation? Shattered. The woman who once had everyone walking on eggshells now had to endure smirks and knowing glances from every single neighbor who had witnessed her spectacular downfall. And me, I enjoyed every second of it, because for once the bully lost, and my mailbox, still standing. Weeks passed, then months. Not once did Karen ever touch my mailbox again. She never even looked at it. Every time she walked by, she crossed to the other side of the street, like it was a memorial to her greatest failure. And in a way, it was. A monument to justice. A symbol that no matter how many times someone tries to push you around, there's always a way to turn the tables. All it took was a little bit of planning and some steel-reinforced karma. And the best part? Karen never saw it coming. If Karen thought wrecking her own SUV on my fortified mailbox was the worst thing that could happen to her, she had no idea what was coming next. Because the fallout? Oh, it was just beginning. She had spent years terrorizing the neighborhood, filing ridiculous HOA complaints, calling the police over nonsense, and generally acting like the self-appointed dictator of the cul-de-sac. But now, the entire neighborhood smelled blood. And it wasn't just me she had to worry about anymore. This was the beginning of the end. The morning after the Great Mailbox Massacre, Karen must have woken up with one hell of a headache. Not just from the public humiliation, not just from the wrecked SUV sitting in her driveway, but from the insurance call she had to make. I had already done my research. Insurance companies don't take kindly to fraudulent claims, and when a person intentionally drives their vehicle into an object, that's not covered. Karen, of course, must have thought she could lie her way through it. I imagine the conversation went something like this. Karen, yes, hi, I'd like to file a claim. Someone damaged my car. Insurance, oh no, what happened? I hit a mailbox. Ah, an accident. Did the mailbox suddenly jump in front of you? No, I just drove into it, on purpose, but it was a trap. Ma'am, are you admitting to intentionally crashing your car? Yeah, that didn't go well. Her claim? Denied. She tried to argue. She screamed at the insurance agent, tried to play the victim, but the security footage, the police report, and her own admission to half the neighborhood sealed her fate. Not only did she get nothing, but she was flagged for reckless driving. That meant her insurance premiums skyrocketed. And just like that, Karen was out thousands of dollars. With Karen's influence shattered, something started happening in the neighborhood. People began standing up to her. For years, she had weaponized the HOA against everyone. If your grass was half an inch too long, you got a complaint. If your car was parked in the wrong spot, she had it towed. But now, the HOA board members who once bent over backwards to appease her were done playing her game. The neighborhood started fighting back. It started small. Mike, my next-door neighbor, deliberately left his trash cans out an extra day just to see if she'd try to report it. She did. The HOA ignored her. Someone else put up unapproved Christmas decorations, something Karen used to have removed immediately. This time, no one cared. A family down the street threw a late-night barbecue, music blasting past Karen's self-imposed curfew. And the best part? The HOA stopped enforcing her petty rules. She filed complaint after complaint, only to be completely ignored. Karen had lost her power, and the entire neighborhood knew it. You'd think Karen would have laid low after everything that happened. But nope. She doubled down. In a desperate attempt to reclaim her power, she started harassing me directly. Standing in her yard, glaring at my house for hours, leaving nasty letters in my mailbox, which she didn't dare hit again. Even trying to spread rumors that I was dangerous and had set her up. I ignored her for the most part. Until one night, I heard a loud bang on my front door. The police. I opened the door, fully expecting some new, ridiculous complaint from Karen. But this time, they weren't here for me. They were here for her. Apparently, some of the neighbors had enough of her nonsense. Someone reported her for harassment. Others had filed complaints about her trespassing. The police had one final warning for her. If she continued, she would face serious legal consequences. And judging by the look on her horrified face, she finally realized she wasn't in control anymore. The police left. Karen never messed with me again. Over the next few weeks, something changed. Karen became quiet. The woman who once patrolled the street like a self-appointed sheriff now barely left her house. No more HOA complaints, no more passive-aggressive letters, no more glaring at my mailbox like it had personally ruined her life, which, in a way, it did. Then, one day, a moving truck appeared in her driveway. She was gone within a week. No goodbye, no explanations, just gone. Rumors swirled. Some said she had been forced to leave after burning every possible bridge in the neighborhood. Others believed she had relocated to another suburb where she could start fresh, somewhere people didn't know about her humiliating downfall. But honestly, I didn't care. Karen was gone. And for the first time in years, the neighborhood felt peaceful again. As for my mailbox, it stood strong. Never touched again. A silent monument, a testament to the fact that bullies only win if you let them. Karen thought she could control everyone. She thought she was invincible. But in the end, she wasn't defeated by fists or threats. She was defeated by a steel-reinforced mailbox and her own stupidity. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. Karen was gone. Her house, once the epicenter of suburban dictatorship, stood empty. No more HOA threats. No more endless complaints. No more tyrannical rule over flower beds and parking spots. The neighborhood breathed again. For years, we had walked on eggshells, living under the shadow of her relentless meddling and manufactured drama. But now things were different. And at the center of it all, standing unscathed, untouched by time, by revenge, by anything, was the mailbox. My mailbox, a silent monument to her downfall, a battle-scarred champion that had stood against the wrath of Karen and won. But the story wasn't over yet, because something strange started happening. Something I never expected. It started small. At first, it was just neighborhood whispers. I heard that mailbox totaled an SUV. No way. That's gotta be exaggerated. Dude, I saw the wreckage. Karen's car got absolutely demolished. Then it spread. A few weeks after Karen's departure, I was outside watering my lawn when a group of teenagers walked by. I noticed them slow down, staring at my mailbox with an unusual amount of awe. One of them, nudging his friend, whispered, "That's the one." I raised an eyebrow. "The one what?" They glanced at me, their faces somewhere between curiosity and disbelief. "The one that, wrecked that lady's car." I blinked. "How do you know about that?" The kid grinned. "Dude, everyone knows." That's when it hit me. This wasn't just a mailbox anymore. It was a legend, and the legend, it was growing. Over time, the stories evolved. Like a game of telephone, each retelling made the mailbox seem even more invincible than before. "Bro, I heard it's made out of military-grade titanium." "Nah, man, my cousin told me it was built with leftover parts from a nuclear bunker." I read online that it's reinforced with concrete and steel. Okay, that one was actually true. Some guy said it can stop a truck going 80 miles per hour. Unconfirmed, but I wouldn't put it past the beast. Dude, what if it's cursed? Like some kind of mailbox demon? Alright, now we were getting ridiculous. It wasn't just local gossip either. One day, a random YouTuber showed up, camera in hand, filming my mailbox like it was a historical monument. Alright guys, today we're standing in front of the legendary Karen Slayer mailbox, the mailbox that took out an entire SUV. Smash that like button if you think it could stop a bulldozer. I watched from my porch, sipping my coffee, wondering how in the actual hell my mailbox had become an internet sensation. I thought the craze would die down. It didn't. At first, it was just neighbors and friends making jokes. Then came strangers. Random cars started slowing down in front of my house. Some people even stopped to take pictures. One guy, who I swear was a blogger or something, approached me while I was taking out the trash. "Excuse me, sir," he said, adjusting his glasses. "I run a blog on indestructible objects, and I was wondering if you'd be willing to do an interview about your mailbox." I blinked. "My what?" "Your mailbox," he said enthusiastically. "It's famous." That's when I knew this had gone too far. One night, around midnight, I was woken up by a loud, metallic thud. My first thought, Karen had returned from exile for round 2. I jumped out of bed, threw on a hoodie, and ran outside, only to find a group of teenagers standing in front of my mailbox. One of them was clutching his hand in pain. "What the hell is going on?" I demanded. The teens turned pale. One of them, the apparent ringleader, hesitated before admitting, "We were, testing the mailbox." I stared at him. He scratched his head. "Yeah, the mailbox challenge." Oh my God. Apparently, some absolute genius on the internet had started a trend, daring people to test the mailbox's strength by punching, kicking, or hitting it with objects. Spoiler alert, the mailbox won. Every single time. The kid holding his hand? He had punched it full force, probably expecting it to give way like a normal mailbox. Instead, he hit solid steel. It took 2 seconds for him to realize he had severely miscalculated. I sighed. Let me guess, you thought you could break it? The teen nodded painfully. Well, I shrugged, at least you're smarter than Karen. She used a whole car. At this point, the mailbox was unstoppable. No one dared mess with it. No HOA member questioned it. It became the heart of the neighborhood, a monument to pettiness, revenge, and ultimate victory. And honestly, I was totally okay with that. Karen had tried to make my life miserable. She had played every dirty trick she could. But in the end, a simple mailbox had defeated her. A mailbox that stood strong while she fell apart. And while I couldn't say for sure if Karen had moved far away to escape the humiliation, I'd like to imagine that, somewhere out there, she still has nightmares about that mailbox. Because even the biggest bullies can be taken down. Sometimes, all it takes is a little steel, some concrete, and the right amount of karma. And that, my friends, is the story of how a simple mailbox took down the worst neighbor in history. But here's the thing. Ever since Karen left, the neighborhood has been peaceful. No more HOA tyranny, no more petty complaints, no more chaos. But recently, a new family moved into Karen's old house. And I've seen the new neighbor watching my mailbox, not in fear, not in awe, but with curiosity. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but if history has taught me anything, if there's another Karen in town, well, let's just say the mailbox is ready.